In 1988, Bon Jovi are under pressure to follow up Slippery When Wet. John recalls at the time,
"The turnaround on New Jersey was incredible. We went home, wrote it, recorded it. There wasn't time to piss. We were determined to make that album work, too. I was determined that people wouldn't be able to say that Slippery was a fluke. We wrote until we had it."
But backing up Slippery wasn't easy.
We demoed the first batch of songs, 17 in all. We really started to feel the pressure because we didn't have the amazing song. I panicked. To be honest, I really wanted to do it again. Not for the monetary reasons, but it was such an amazing feeling to have done what we'd done. I'm walking around the house yelling, "I got to pay for this place. We've got to write some fucking hot songs."
Teaming up with Desmond Child again, the band did manage to write not one, but a handful of hits. Bad Medicine and the ballad I'll Be There For You were #1 hits, while several other tracks, such as Born to Be My Baby, Lay Your Hands on Me, and Living in Sin, reached the top 10. The album spent 4 weeks at #1 in the United States, where it would be certified 7 times platinum, and debuts at #1 in the UK and Australia. While it fails to beat its predecessor in terms of commercial success, a feat matched by Def Leppard's Hysteria in 1987, New Jersey is still the third best-selling album of the year, and for many, represents a musical step forward to more complicated and adventurous compositions such as Blood on Blood, an ode to childhood bonds, brotherhood, and loyalty. But that brotherhood and loyalty would be tested on the road. John dreaded returning to the stage to support New Jersey.
I was on steroids. I had grown a beard for 2 weeks. We really shouldn't have done that. I was like, "Stop, please, I'm dying." And they said, "We've still got to go to Australia, to Europe again." And holy fuck, I just wanted to crawl into bed and die.
Bon Jovi, while commercially successful beyond their wildest dreams, were growing apart. As Sambora put it,
"I had to sleep until the moment I left. That's how fucked up we were. You can imagine 2 and a half-month tours back to back. We never stopped. We were riding the rocket ship of success. We stayed on the road forever. We were so fried. But they were the days of wine and roses, and everybody, actually not everybody, was indulging in the pleasures of the day. It was a more promiscuous time, and we were having a blast. And then it just got really fucking tired. It was really hard to be able to take care of anybody else but yourself. And we always used to look out for each other. Still do. But everyone was struggling with their demons, and no one was talking, and that's when you get isolated."
And while Bon Jovi were navigating the excesses of life on the road, perhaps buoyed on by an opportunistic manager who wanted to make the most of the hot band, with shades of Colonel Tom Parker evident, Motley Crue were navigating their own flammable and highly explosive lifestyles. It's January 1988, and the first member of Motley Crue to check into rehab is Tommy Lee. He enters the Cottonwood facility in Tucson, hoping to confront the demons of his addiction. On his second day, a doctor helps Tommy realize the immense power his addiction has held over him for years. Memories of his childhood punishment, being sent to his room and ignored, flood his mind when he sees a sign that reads "Silence equals death." A week later, the rest of the band joins Tommy at Cottonwood, upon the suggestion of Bob Timmons. United once again, they stand in a circle, arms around each other, and sing the Rolling Stones' "You Can't Always Get What You Want" as part of their therapy. During the exercise, Nicky Sixx's repressed resentment towards his dad erupts, and he breaks down, visualizing himself as a vulnerable little boy. Meanwhile, a Pennsylvania resident named Matthew John Tripp files a lawsuit against Crüe managers Doc McGee and Doug Thaler. Tripp claims that after Sixx's serious car accident in 1983, that McGee and Thaler brought him in as a replacement for Nicky. He alleges that he wrote songs like Danger, Knockin' Dead Kid, Girls, 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 You're All I Need, Dancing on Glass, and Wild Side, and demands unpaid royalties. However, Tripp's troubled past, including a history of drug use and time spent in mental institutions, casts doubt over his claims. In a separate legal matter, Doc McGee faces legal trouble for his involvement in smuggling marijuana into North Carolina from Colombia in 1982. This is not McGee's first drug trafficking charge. He previously faced charges for smuggling cocaine into Louisiana. After pleading guilty, McGee receives a 5-year suspended prison sentence, a $15,000 fine, and is ordered to establish an anti-drugs foundation called the Make a Difference Foundation. Vince Neil completes his 200 hours of community service and probation, stemming from his vehicular manslaughter charge in December of 1984. With his legal obligations fulfilled, Vince joins Guns N' Roses on stage at the Cat House in Hollywood, performing the AC/DC classic Whole Lotta Rosie. But tragedy strikes when a 12-year-old fan from Hollywood, Florida, attempts to imitate Nicky's flaming guitar stunt from Motley Crue's Loudwire music video. The boy sets his legs on fire and suffers burns over 10% of his body, and the band issue a statement urging fans not to try their dangerous stunts at home. While the rest of the band is in and out of rehab, Mick Mars takes a different approach to sobriety. He attends group meetings and therapy sessions initially, but finds that quitting on his own terms works better for him and saves money. Mick's determination not to drink anymore, fueled by his disgust at his appearance and Nicky's close brush with death, leads to a significant weight loss and a smoother recovery. Nicky, Tommy, and Vince continue their struggles with addiction, frequently checking in and out of expensive rehab facilities. Nicky sells his house in Sherman Oaks for $500,000 and moves to Hidden Hills, where he isolates himself for months, writing songs but feeling disconnected from reality. In a hungover state, Vince marries his 23-year-old girlfriend Charisse Leanne Riddell at the Hotel Bel Air in Los Angeles. However, rumors soon circulate that Vince and Charisse are experiencing marital problems, only 3 months into their marriage, as they find themselves constantly fighting after Charisse leaves her dancing and mud wrestling career. Despite the ongoing personal challenges, legal battles, and strained relationships, Motley Crue persevere. The band, now clean for the most part, ponder just how threatening and dangerous they could be given everything they've managed to achieve under the influence of copious amounts of drugs. Unhappy with producer Tom Werman, they meet up with Bob Rock, who previously worked with The Cult, Ted Nugent, and Kingdom Come. It turns out to be a stroke of genius. In the midst of their creative process for the new album, Motley Crue work on a song called Kickstart My Heart, inspired by Nicky's near-death overdose. Nicky believes it has little chance of making the album, but Tommy recognizes its resemblance to the Sweets' Ballroom Blitz. Rock's meticulous nature pushes the band to their limits, with Mick Mars spending weeks perfecting guitar parts and Vince often only recording one word after a whole day's work. Aerosmith, also under the guidance of rehab specialist Bob Timmons, is working on their album Pump in the studio next door, and they become fast friends with Motley Crue, hydrating together and going for runs after studio sessions. The crew even has a personal trainer on board, overseeing their daily workouts and runs. But it's not all smooth sailing and sobriety for the clean crew. One Sunday night, Nicky and Tommy join Bob Rock for dinner in LA. A glass of wine turns into a bottle, leading Nicky to call a dealer. But Bob Rock intervenes, bringing them back to A&M Studios, where Tommy and Nicky would carve swastikas into the walls, as if directed at Bob Rock. Meanwhile, Doc McGee works on organizing the Moscow Music Peace Festival. Arranged through his Make a Difference Foundation, it's to feature Skid Row, The Scorpions, Ozzy Osbourne, Motley Crue, and Bon Jovi. And the event aims to raise funds for anti-drug and anti-alcohol charities. It's ironic, of course, because the commercial jet that carries all of the bands over from America to the Soviet Union is full of bands getting high and drunk. In fact, John Bon Jovi also recalls that discarded syringes were found on the plane after band members left. But the roots of the music festival ultimately are held in the desire of a convicted international drug trafficker, Doc McGee, to evade jail time. The festival, in essence, caters to the interests of those on the stage rather than those off it. As Tommy Lee said, McGee's secret life unraveled when he was caught helping smuggle 40,000 pounds of pot from Colombia into North Carolina. As Tommy Lee says, anyone else would have faced a significant prison sentence for such a crime. However, McGee, with his connections and wealth, had the opportunity to prove his worth and demonstrate a positive impact on the world. To achieve this, he founded his foundation and conceived the Moscow Music Peace Festival to raise funds for noble causes, commemorate the 20th anniversary of Woodstock, and build a bridge from east to west. But Tommy would say,
"It was all bad from the moment we stepped on the plane." There was a so-called doctor on board who was plying the bands who weren't sober with whatever medicine they needed. It was clear that this was going to be a monumental festival of hypocrisy. Doc had told each band something different in order to get them to do the show. John Bon Jovi thought it was just another stop on his world headlining tour, while we thought it was supposed to be a small scale, reduced set. Then the production manager broke the news to us that we'd been demoted. We were on before Ozzy and the Scorpions. I was fucking livid. Doc was supposed to be our manager, looking out for our best interests, and he was favoring one of his newer clients, Bon Jovi, over us and the Scorpions, who in Russia were massive.
and with Bon Jovi firmly on the stage, the unthinkable happens. Fireworks rain down from the sky. After witnessing Bon Jovi use pyrotechnics on stage, Tommy's anger erupts. This was in stark contrast to Motley Crue's instructions to refrain from such displays. In his rage, he finds McGee backstage and punches him in the face, expressing his disappointment and disillusionment. Apparently, the pyrotechnics were a malfunction. They were supposed to go off after all bands had finished their sets. But Motley Crue aren't so sure. Nicky barges in.
Fuck you, Doc. We didn't fly all the way to Russia to be an opening act while Bon fucking Jovi gets to headline for an hour and a half. What's up with that? You're fucking fired.
After all is said and done, the festival draws a crowd of over 100,000 people and captures the attention of a worldwide television audience of 1 billion viewers. Following the festival, McGee is officially terminated and replaced with Doug Thaler, who sets up his own company, Top Rock Development. The change represents a turning point in Motley Crue's career trajectory, and it comes just 2 weeks before the band drops what would become its 5th and most commercially successful album, Dr. Feelgood. With a fresh, heavy and crisp sound, courtesy of Bob Rock, and renewed energy and enthusiasm, courtesy of Laying Off the Drugs, the album boasts 2 top 10 hits in Dr. Feelgood and Without You, and the Bang Your Head and Hit the Pedal to the Metal stomper, Kickstart My Heart. Released on August 28, 1989, the album would fare one better than its predecessor, reaching number 1 on the US Billboard chart and staying on the chart for a solid 109 weeks, little more than 2 years. In all, the album would end up selling 6 million units in the United States, just shy of, but pretty much on par with Bon Jovi's New Jersey. Motley Crue would play an intense tour schedule, playing 154 shows from October 89 through to August 1990. The band was at the peak of its powers, more energetic and powerful than ever, more creative and focused, but controversy and drama was never too far behind. The relentless touring and exhaustive schedule took its toll on Motley Crue, leaving its members exhausted and on edge. The mounting tiredness ignited conflicts, escalating tensions within the band. In 1992, following the release of the commercially successful compilation album Decade of Decadence, which hit number 2 in the US, went platinum, and stayed on the charts for almost a year, mounting conflicts reached breaking point, and it all culminated in the band's decision to part ways with Vince Neil. The official statement suggested that Vince Neil wanted to focus more on his car racing. However, Vince disputes this, asserting that he was fired because the band wanted to shift towards more blues-based music, a direction he did not agree with. In a 1993 interview with the LA Times, Vince shared his perspective on the period.
We had been rehearsing for a few months, but we didn't do any recording. It just wasn't sounding good to me. I'm not a blues singer. And Motley is a rock band, not a blues band. I think it's a stupid idea that will alienate the fans.
Vince's departure would mark the end of an era for the band, one that proved to be the band's high watermark commercially. But 1992 marked not just an end of an era for Motley Crue, but with socially conscious grunge and alternative rock starting to dominate the airwaves and making the hard party and girls, girls, girls anthems of the 1980s look a little passé, it marked the end of the entire 80s hard rock and glam metal era that spawned both Motley Crue and Bon Jovi. And both bands now faced an uncertain future, needing to either adapt or die. In the next and final episode of this season, we explore life after 1992 for both Bon Jovi and Motley Crue, where they and their rivalry is today, and their legacy on rock and metal music.